In the last unit we talked about column charts, or in the last recording we talked about column charts. In this one I'd like to talk about line charts. Line charts and column charts can often be used interchangeably. Whether you use one or the other really depends on how one looks compared to the other. I think in this first example that I'm going to do, that the column chart is going to give me the information a little bit better and the line chart will be cluttered. According to the book, line charts work very well when you're graphing data over a period of time, which is what we did here. We did beginning of October to the end of October, so this should work pretty well. So what I'm going to try to do is copy this chart. I'm going to copy it, and we'll create a copy, and we'll put it at the beginning. It'll be fine, and we'll rename it to line chart 1. Still a column chart, but I can click in here and then go to the Design tab and change the chart type to a line chart. Line charts come in different flavors. This is the one I normally use, a line chart with no markers on it. And notice you can graph multiple things on the same line. This one stacks them, so it's kind of like a stacked column chart that I didn't do in the recording, but the book talks about. Each line is added to the one below it, so that one's not so great. This is the other one I use alternatively. It has little markers at every data point, and this is a 3D version of that. I'm not too thrilled with that, so I'm just going to go with the straightforward one here, and that's kind of what it would look like. Let's take a look. So now it's changed it. And because this is the month of October, that may not be too bad, but I think I can see the data in the column chart a little better than I can here in the line chart. So what I just demonstrated, first of all, is that you can copy charts and then in the copy change things. So if you want to experiment and not have to worry about losing your first one, you can do that. And also demonstrated that column charts and line charts can often be used to graph the same data and just as effectively. But now let's go back and actually create a line chart from scratch. Do it pretty much the same thing as the same way as any other chart. Okay. I still have from the last unit my worksheet with frozen panes. Okay. Remember I clicked on row 5, I went to view, and I said freeze panes, and now I can scroll through my data and keep my titles up here at the top. That'll come in, that could come in handy. Okay. But what I want to do for this first chart is graph the entire sales for the year 2012. So I'm going to have to create a collection of cells. So I'm going to select first of all of the 2012 dates. There we go. And now control drag all of the totals. And darn it, my Mac is still not treating me well. We'll see how this goes here. I have to do it again. There we go. And now I've selected the data that I want to graph. Right, so I really didn't need to freeze panes here. So let's unfreeze them, that way they'll be ready next time. To unfreeze them, go back. I'm again in the View tab. Here's the Freeze Panes button. To unfreeze them, you unfreeze them here, and now they just scroll like they normally would. Again, because I have a collection of cells, I can't use the Quick Analysis tool to create my chart. I need to use the Insert Chart, and here's the Line Option button. And I'm going to use the same line. And you can see that it creates a pretty nice chart that shows me what's going on throughout the year. Once again, I'm going to move it to a chart sheet. And we'll call this line chart 2. And I can see what's going on here. And now we can start customizing this. First thing we should do is change the title. So this is the 2012 Sales Analysis. And we'll leave the size the way it is. We don't have to do too much else with that. Okay. And now I can start manipulating the chart a little bit. I could change the line color. I could do a few things, but there's a lot of wasted space down here. And so I think what I want to do is chart or start charting at about, let's say 1500 to save some of that space. It'll also make some of these, when you do that, it'll make some of these differences a little more significant. So you have to be careful. I'm going to go down to, I'm going to go over to, excuse me, my axis values, and then I'm going to click on the axis options. and the minimum is set at 0 and the maximum set at 4,000. I can change the 4,000. I'm going to change the minimum to 1,500. And notice now I don't have quite so much wasted space in the chart. Okay? But some of these dips are much more significant than they were when we first started. Other things we can do, we can click on the lines and we can add markers to this. Okay, so when I format this data series, I want to add markers, I believe. Trendline, legend, error bar, data tables, no markers here. Where's my markers? Under fill. There it is, marker. So I went to the fill option. After selecting the line, I went to the fill option. Here's an option for markers. Initially, there are no markers because that's the line that I chose or the line style that I chose. If you wish, you can add markers. Okay, right now, there's none. I can use some built-in ones or I can use an automatic one. So I'm going to use the built-in ones. Notice they come in different shapes. So I can put an X or a diamond at every one of those points. I think I'll use the diamond. And I'll change the size is probably going to be, let's make it a little bigger. There I can see the diamonds. And then for the marker I can fill them with a solid color. And right now they're set at gray. So if I wanted to, I can make them a different shade. Nah, let's make them orange, see how they look. Not bad. So that's a quick fix. So we've changed the axis values. We've done that with the column charts as well, so that shouldn't be anything too new. I can also add data labels here if I want to. But I think the other thing I want to do, notice this is going in steps of 500. Maybe I should cut that and get me a little more detail here. So again, I'm going to go to this axis and go to the axis options and change the tick marks. The major, I don't want to see them, but I want to change the major axis is at 500. I think I want to change that to 100. And now I get some more lines and I get some more values. It's a little easier to figure out where these values are actually appearing. But there are a couple of them here that I want to highlight. This bottom one here, but that was a bad week in that month, and I want to highlight that by displaying its value. Notice I can touch it and see its value, but I actually want the value to be on the chart. If I go to the data labels now, it puts a label on every one of those positions. That's a preview. That's not bad. Okay, but I really don't want them on every one of those. I think I just want them on this one. So I'm going to click to select the line and then click again to select just that one data label and say, give me the data label. And while you're at it, put it below the line so that I can see it a little better. Then I can click on that number and make it bigger. In this chart, it's a little small. If I left this where it started, it probably would have been okay. And there's that number. What I don't quite understand, let's see what happens if I remove my formatting guy here. There we go. These things are actually stuck inside the chart. I wonder if there's a way to slide those over so that I can get to this last data value and actually see it. I'm not sure why this is here. Might have something to do with the size of the screen. So let me see what happens if I shrink my Excel window a little bit. Did they move out of the way? Nope, they stayed there. Actually, that wasn't Excel. They're still in the way. So if I wanted to get a value on that last one, there's a big value there. I would have to shift things around a little bit and don't know if there's a way to turn this off. So that's something I've never run into before that we're kind of stuck with here. I don't know exactly how to get these to shift over a little bit. But we can add the data values, and that's really what I wanted to show you. Okay, and this can also get a little busy, and so maybe I want to change the plot area. Actually, I think I'll do that in my next example here. We changed the mins, we can also change the max. We added the markers and we added data labels. So there's one chart, one line chart that shows you what's going on. This graphs one category of data, the 2012 data. If you want to, you can categorize or you can create multi-category line charts. That's what we did in the first one. So let's go back to that line chart where the lines overlap. Sometimes that works okay like it did here, but let me do one more example before I end this and show you that you can really get lines that are very hard, line graphs that are very hard to understand. I'm going to graph the sales for Region 1 and Region 2 in 2012. So I've grabbed my titles and I've grabbed my dates. Now I can use the quick analysis tool because this is a range, not a collection. Charts, line chart, and there's my line chart. And notice how hard that is to read. Right? Those values are overlapping to the point where I can hardly see what's going on. So you can do it, but if you've got a lot of data and the data is very similar, it can be very, very hard to read. So I'm going to throw that into a third line chart here. And it's not a whole lot better to read there. Again, I could change the values and squeeze that in a little bit, but the values are so close. And imagine if I did that with region 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There would be 5 lines all blurred on top of each other, very, very hard to read. You might be able to see a few things here, but you have to be careful when you're using line charts. And remember from the previous example, this might be a little easier to read if I change the plot area. I've closed my formatting pane. To bring it back, you simply double click. And if I wanted to, I could fill the background color orange. It's not so good. Let's go with a lighter orange, see how that looks, almost yellow. That's the plot area. You can also do the chart area and fill it with a gradient like we've done before and make them all look kind of the same. Looks okay, but very hard to read. This would be much easier to read, I think. Let's test it by changing the chart to a column chart. Don't know how much because there's so much data and how much easier it is to read. You can kind of preview it here. It's still quite a bit of overlap and very hard to kind of see what the trends are because there's so much data. All right, so that's the basics of line charts. Line charts a lot like column charts, but you can put markers on them. You can graph multiple pieces of data at the same time. Depends on what you need. You can easily do a preview by going changing the chart type to a different kind and seeing how it looks there. Bar chart probably won't help much. Okay, so that's line charts.